looks like I lied to all of you about what was going on. I thought that the main stuff was over with. I understand that they're supposed to be bringing out the policy, the first reading of the new bathroom policies to be happening here in the MatSu Valley, and that will be the next agenda item. So hello, Alaskans, please like and share this video. This is part 2 to the MatSu School Board MatSu School Board Meeting. And earlier we got to listen to about the logic classes that they wanted to pass, and it did pass unanimously across the board, which was very good to see. I guess that the speakers here tonight, the decision was already in the works for what was going to happen. Please like and share this video. Hopefully you're all hearing me loud and clear right now. I've got to close this one out and go back into the other one that I was in. Let's just get this going here. We should be up and live in here in front of you. Make sure you guys can all hear me loud and clear. This is, oh, there we go. Yes, this is part 2 to what is going on tonight. And I was packing up to go home because I got to be up bright and early at 5 a.m. in the morning. And I just discovered that they are going to be discussing the bathroom policies here tonight, and what their new policy is going to look like. It's going to have its first reading. So thank you all for being here. Again, like and share. Do apologize about shutting this down early. If I would have known, I would have just kept it running. Going to be starting here any minute now. Thank you.
Emergency, and we have Mr. Folk, who is filling in his stead. At this time, we will go ahead, and I would like to again thank all of the comments that were made, public comments of best time. We're going to move to action item 9A, now currently resolution 23004, logic curriculum. Is there a motion and a second?
I move action item 9A, resolution 23-004, logic curriculum.
Is there a second?
Second.
With that, we will go to administrative report. Mr. Folk, is there an administrative report on the same?
There's no administrative report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Folk. We'll go ahead and open it up to the board discussion. Member Larson?
Thank you. I'd like to start out with asking where this course is currently in the Curriculum Council process for new courses. Is this in the Curriculum Council at all?
It is not in the Curriculum Council at this point.
Okay. I feel that regardless of the course content, the process that needs to be followed should be the same. Every new course that a teacher, principal, or student, or school district employee wants to create must go through the same process. The process is an application for new courses or programs that requires course of a few things, such as first, a discipline as it would be written in the program studies. Secondly, a needs assessment providing evidence through student interest data, assessment data, research, or literature that established a need for the course. Third, the course outcomes and syllabus must be written out. Fourth, a possible textbook or reference must be there. And fifth, a peer review team must be set. At the time the course goes in front of the Curriculum Council, where it is presented, discussed, and either accepted or denied. If it is accepted, it is then sent to the school board where a presentation again and either accepted or denied. When it is accepted through the school board, the superintendent and Curriculum Council and the team of professionals decide whether or not it is a required course or an elective. I would like to know where this course is currently and the process, which I asked initially, which the process is the school board has brought it up. I have a copy of the new course program approval and its lengthy application process, which has not been followed. So this course has not been followed the proper channels of a new course. And again, the superintendent, its staff, and the professionals decide if this should be a required or an elective course. Eventually, I will ask that this course be tabled indefinitely, but I want to hear from the other board members and put through this process, the process that everything goes through as far as a new course. I've been on the board for a long time, and we've approved a lot of new courses. It takes a definite 6 months to a year for a course to come to fruition in front of this board, not a 2-week period. If this board decides tonight for this to go into an action item approval, then the board is actually going against its own required policies and its own direction, and it's not for this board to make a decision if it should be a required course or an elective. Thank you.
Any other board discussion? Member Probasco?
Through the chair to Board Member Hart, the resolution 22-004 you presented at the last meeting, and when I read the resolution, what essentially I read was a course syllabus where all the topics to be covered in this class were identified, as well as expected outcomes in the 11th grade year. And to echo Board Member Larson, you know, our district procedure for course selection and approval was not followed, but this is very well written. And my question is, where did it come from? I haven't heard in my tenure in the district, my short tenure on the board, the need for a logic class. And that's the question.
Thank you for that. This particular board, this syllabus was laid out by I work with a panel of logic professors, and asked them specifically, what can we teach them at the 9th grade level? What would a 9th grader be able to handle? And they put something together, and the idea of putting these particular items that were identified, these were items that were identified specifically to help them to take a look at, yes, anything from propaganda, schemes, to newspaper headline stories, and to be able to systematically analyze We brought this before Dr. Brady and his staff that he had present to be able to say, is this something that could be worked? They were optimistic it could, but they also had to look into the details of how to work it in. This wasn't something where they automatically said, yes, it's going to be an elective or has to take electives or anything of that nature. So after that, we put together the resolution to put this as a requirement that it be taught. The reason for the class, 9th grade class, was because yes, we incorporate these things into various studies, and that's why we, on the 11th grade, the Socratic logic was left to be incorporated. And I'm glad to hear that people would mention the standards already incorporate some of these things. But the thing with incorporation is almost like taking, you can incorporate art class, if you will, or elements of art class into English or history, etc. You can as an application. But what I was specifically trying to accomplish was that they take this and understand this as important. And when they're learning this, it doesn't get diluted by the rest of the coursework around it. So instead of being an application to a particular course, that it would actually be the course itself. To answer to Mr. Larson, that was not brought up. I was aware of that requirement. So I don't have any specific answers for that. But insofar as the resolution, as the board, we do have the responsibility to decide what, the curriculum, what it is we'd like to have emphasized, taught, et cetera. So that's why it's not brought forward as a resolution now. Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Hart again, we do have that. But it's real specific in here where the curriculum is to be developed and then phased in starting in the 2023-2024 school year, currently with students who are in 8th grade who will be in our 9th grade year. Like I say, I'm seeing the syllabus here, and when I read where it's under therefore be it resolved, it sounds like the district was being asked to collaborate with local and state ecology and university logic professors to package this in some type of curriculum. And then I had it written down, but I also heard it said tonight about, with a logic class, had there been an audit of current courses that cover these same topics that are listed here, which, under fallacies and logic. So, and was this intended to be an elective or a required course for graduation?
This was intended to be required as a course of instruction. Insofar as the audit that may have been done, I don't believe that there has been. And I believe, as far as the way I was thinking about this when they prepared for it, corporation, that would be something that the district would take care of. As far as making an amendment to this to change the date, my last impression when we were talking, they seemed to think that they could get together a curriculum fairly quickly. And that's why the optimistic case is to begin phasing it in. But working with the professors, part of the reason for that was because we do need lots of training staff to be able to teach the course. And so that's something else that the district would do.
Thank you. What we'll do, we got Member Larson and then Member Brady.
I have the curriculum approval, new course, it's called New Course Program Approval Form. And it has all the headlines of what the course is. And part one is course program, is the quarter, semester, year, what credit it is, and it goes on and on. And then part two, needs assessment, provided evidence through student interest data, assessment data, research, and or literature that establishes the need for this course and program. Section 2. Section 3, attach the course program outline and syllabus. Section 4, textbooks and resources needed. Part 5, course developers. Provide the signatures from all writers of the course, including the origins and the 2 required contributing teachers. At least 3 schools need to be represented. What we're talking about now, and it goes on, part 6 is peer review. Provide signatures of all and comments of all teachers who have reviewed this course, and proposal must be at least 3 supportive signatures And then 7 is administrative and principal statement of support, and it talks about the same thing. And then the curriculum council coordinator representative approval. So it goes through a very lengthy approval method, and we are entertaining a course that's coming from outside the school district, being developed outside the school district without any public process, student process, teachers process. We have a process to get courses online or up in front of our kids or approved. This board hires a superintendent. The superintendent then determines the course of study. We hire the superintendent that the board at the time feels is the course of study we want to, and the person that's in there. Then they determine it, their staff determine it, and then when the course comes up in front of us for approval, we would hear from the superintendent. Instead tonight, we have no report because it's not gone through the proper channels. And the school district didn't develop this. Now, if we approved this course, and I'm not saying the course is bad, I'm not saying the course is not a legitimate course or shouldn't be there. We're talking about the process. But if this school board approves that process, then, Mr. President, I have 2 or 3 other courses I would like to bring up, and I'm serious. I've got a whole string of courses I'd like to bring up, and we can make requirements all day long. And I'm serious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Go ahead, Mr. Birdie.
Hey, my take on the resolution, again, I'm a fan of logic, but when you look and see how this resolution is structured, this would be an incredible burden on our homeschool families within the district. When you go out and look at curriculum to purchase, most logic curriculum out there is non-secular. By statute, we cannot expend family allotment on non-secular materials. So every one of our homeschool families who have a 9th grader or an 11th grader will be required to expend personal funds if we can find, if there's even a course out there that is compatible with this, which I was not able to find, okay? And even if you go out and search for philosophical courses, logic courses, they're in the table of contents. When you look down through, it looks like it is very secular, but it has been approved by, and I left my notes, I'm sorry, but an NABS or something like that committee, which is a King James biblical think tank, if you will. And that statement alone in the front cover of the book is sufficient to deny that course from being reimbursed through student allotment. So now what we're doing is we're developing a course which is going to require every 9th grader, every 11th grader who enrolls in MatSu Central, which is our homeschool facility, to have a butt-in chair, if you will, mandatory course. 9th graders can't drive, so now we have parents having to drive for a course, okay? Unless we're also going to task the curriculum department with developing concurrently a course that is compatible with homeschool. So we would actually have to do 2 courses, or excuse me, 4 instead of 2, in order to make sure that we are not burdening our homeschool population. So we would need to do some pretty significant rewriting on this to make sure that our homeschool population has sufficient flexibility so that if this resolution is enacted and we do go forward with this, that we are not burdening that population. Because right now, the way it will be a burden to those families. And it will be a financial burden, not just an academic. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments that I'd like to put out there. One is, in the resolution, it does state that the board hereby directs the superintendent and staff to create a logic curriculum. Can't speak for Member Hart or anybody that prepared this resolution, though I would think that in that create a logic curriculum, it would probably go down the channel that you have said, or Member Larson. Additionally, I do love the idea of having the logic class offered within the MatSu borough, and I want to commend Member Hart for the time and effort that he put forth in putting this together, because again, I think that logic is an important thing. All of those said, I share the same concerns that we've heard tonight in relation to the course. One is the current graduation requirements. How do we implement something within a structure where we've been increasing the graduation requirements? Now we're going to add another course that's going to be a requirement. I don't know how that would work. I will ask Assistant Deputy Superintendent Folk what that might look like. But then also the other thing that is in the back of my mind with this is the staff requirements. I doubt that we would have staff in every building that might be certified to teach this, and I don't know what that looks like. I know that if you're a math teacher, if you're teaching math, then there's certain things that you would have to have for that credential, and I don't know if we have. I don't know if this would require credentials, philosophy credentials, and I just can't imagine we have the staff in all the schools to be able to do that. Now, that all being said, I think that if it was offered as a elective, then that would provide it and try it in a couple schools. That's not the resolution that's before us, so I wouldn't want to try to amend it to become elective. I think it would be best that this be voted on, but then, if it does fail, that it be considered in the future as an elective class. But with that, just on the current graduation requirements, because that was one of the biggest things that was hit, how would that look, Superintendent Fuller?
Yes, I'd like to defer to Associate Superintendent of Instruction, Mr. Resetter, to answer that.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Resetter, Associate Superintendent of Instruction, I'll do my best. So with a 25.5 credit requirement currently, outside of core area requirements required by our district, some of those are also state requirements. For example, 4 years of English, 3.5 years of social studies, 3 years of science, 3 years of math. It leaves our current students, or the class of 25, so that 25.5 credit requirement, it leaves them room, those students room for about 7 credits worth of electives. So think of that as every semester a student can earn half a credit throughout the course of the year. They earn, so if they're in a music class for the entire year, that's 1 credit.
So if, I'm sorry, just to summarize those, so therefore it would be an elective that would be eating into.
Unless the credit requirements changed, so with the current 25.5 credits, it would come from, the class would come from the general elective category, which would reduce it from 7 to 6, unless the 25.5 credit requirement changed, which of course is the board action.
Or because that's not associated with this, right? We have a resolution before us. We're not looking at decreasing with this resolution any of the required classes. By default, it's only going to be eating into an elective course under the current establishment.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Member Murray and Member Larson.
So, from my experience in past life at the university, I worked extensively with graduation requirements. One of the things that I saw with logic outside of philosophy degrees is the pathways. That logic was used as a mathematics building block into computer science, and it was also used as a building block into the humanities, into English and such. And again, goes back to my comment earlier about restructuring this resolution, is taking the components out of these, and we could use it as a core requirement without increasing graduation and without removing an elective, as long as we align it with state standards to move it to support the math department and to move it, to create and meet standards which, you know, the rhetoric portion of the triumvium, as Aristotle and Plato would say, would fit in with the humanities, and they wouldn't say it, they were the guys who thought it up. And then we would have a building block then to support those departments, and we would add one more core requirement in to support math without burdening the students with an additional course. We would give them, in both of those departments, one more option to complete the core requirement. But again, by saying that, I would also revert back to what Member Larson was saying, is that if we want to go that route, we need to use the appropriate procedure within district to move it through the curriculum department.
And to that comment, I would just like to throw out, I wonder, I don't expect an answer, but if Member Hart went through this process, perhaps maybe in the future, you know, why that wasn't, you know, brought up and addressed earlier, right? If that is the case. But with that, we'll go with Member Larson and then Member Taylor.
I'm going to repeat myself. This, in my opinion, this board is totally out of alignment on this issue. This board looks at budgets, hires a superintendent, looks at the overview of the school system. This board does not select course of studies. This board does not say a course of study should be a requirement. You know, once again, if we do that, we are totally out of alignment and totally out of order. Because I've got 2 courses I will bring up next meeting and ask for an action item and ask for them to be requirements. That's not our position. We hire a superintendent of schools who hires the staff underneath them to set the course of study, to set the requirements as per the standards of the state as well as federal government, and as the board kind of oversees and talks to them. But it is not our position to bring up a course, then require it to be the curriculum council to look at. There's nowhere on this form that says the board of directors or the school board wants this course. If so, I've got 2 more courses that I want to push through. We're out of order. This shouldn't even been brought up. This should not be an action item.
Thank you, Member Larson. Member Taylor.
Thank you. First off, Oli, thank you, Member Larson. Appreciate your input here. I heard you loud and clear. I would support tabling this, going on that path for those very reasons. But I do want to highlight just a couple things. Mostly what we've heard tonight. You know, we're talking logically up here, you know, about this whole process. But I copy emotionally also. We required our students to rise above the normal, giving them higher credit requirements to graduate. And we believe in them, that they can do that they will come out better for that, smarter, more intelligent, able to think logically. We believe they can do that and accomplish that and make the world a better place, and that will increase our standing, increase where our test scores and everything like that are. You know, we've implemented that because we do believe in them. We have standards that we have to abide by. We have classes that are required by state or by what we have here in policies. And we do need to abide by that. Math, reading, English, social report, comparative courses. To muddy the water is something that I don't know, in my mind, removes some freedoms from families to choose what courses to have. In some ways, a logic course could impede upon people's freedoms of what they want their kids taught. Things could be shared in those courses that not all life is logical. A lot of life is emotional. A lot of life is spiritual. And logic could step on those toes. So I think we're treading in dangerous water to try to make a course such as logic mandatory or a required course. And the other thing, the last thing is that we've made some changes in recognizing policies this last year. Policies are being highlighted, being talked about in our PLC class, in our PLC meetings. They're being talked about here and being highlighted for the public to see and be more transparent. And I think we as a board, as Member Larson has pointed out, we need to abide by our policies. And so, anyway, I hope we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Taylor. With that, I would like to move this agenda item on, and Member Larson, you had indicated earlier that you might put forth
I move to table this item indefinitely.
With that, we'll go ahead and provide discussion on the motion that's put before us. Is there any comments before moving to a vote on this that wishes before us to table this item indefinitely? Member Underwood, please.
I just would like a quick comment that I do just want to recognize that I do feel that it's very important for kids to be able to choose their own interests, such as the ROTC program or extracurricular, like PE classes and things like that. I just think it's vital for kids to be able to have that choice. So in consideration of future curriculum or classes, I don't have to take away any kind of electives from kids, because we all remember being kids as well and having electives, and that was probably one of our favorite parts of school. So if that is a consideration in the future, just it's something that's not going to take away any of those programs that are like the ROTC. You know, a lot of kids go right into the service that's really important to them. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Thank you. And I too just would like to thank Superintendent Everett for his response. And meaning to cut you off, but I was getting to the point that if we were to implement this, it is going to take away the electives, and so thank you for that. With that, we'll go ahead and is there any further comment? No, we'll go ahead and vote. Member Larson.
Would you explain the vote, please?
If you vote a yes, then you are voting to table this resolution indefinitely. If you vote for no, then you're voting against tabling this resolution. And if there's enough yeses, we will move on to the next agenda item. If there's a majority of no's, then we'll go back to discussing the resolution 23004 logic curriculum. So with that, do you understand? Is there any other questions in relation? No? Okay, Member Larson.
Yes.
Member Brady.
Yes.
Member Carrasco.
Yes.
Member Underwood.
Yes.
Member Taylor.
Yes.
Member Hart.
Yes.
And I do vote yes. Therefore, resolution 23004 logic curriculum has been tabled indefinitely. We will go ahead now and we will move to agenda item, action item B, resolution 23002, authorizing the transfer of $13.5 million to the MatSu Borough for the construction of MatSu Central School. Is there a motion?
I move action item B, resolution 23002, authorizing the transfer of $13,500,000 to the MatSu Borough for the construction of MatSu Central School.
Second.
Is there an administrative report?
Yes, at last week's work session, we discussed this resolution at length. There was the discussion amongst the board, but also several assembly members and the borough manager joined us for a portion of that work session. During the discussion, there were a number of different ideas around how the school district could go about funding such a proposal. The proposal that came to us from the MatSu Borough was a request that we committed $10.5 million, which was already committed by the school board, plus an additional $3 million of current year resources. And then a plan to repay the $3.4 million that they also requested over a 5-year period. And then a final component of that proposal was that $1.3 million was paid by the district for FF&E at a later date. So that was one proposal that was discussed at length. Another idea that was circulated was the idea that maybe we don't pay all $13.5 million up front. Maybe it's just the 10.5, and we lengthen the payback period, if you will, from 5 to, let's say, 12 or 13 years, if we want to include that equity. So there was some discussion around different ways of doing that. There seemed to be some, agreement with the assembly members that were there. It was clear that they were not representing the whole assembly, but they were representing themselves as individuals. And so just leave it up to, I guess, the board to discuss this further. There are some potential amendments that could be offered to this resolution that would also address the next action 23-003. So I guess I'll turn it back over to the board for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Volk. Is there any discussion on this? Member Berg?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to bring forth some changes that were brought forth by administration to this resolution, if I may.
Please.
Do you want me to do it incrementally, or do you just want the whole thing?
Let's go ahead with the whole thing for right now.
Okay. Starting on the front page, the second to last whereas, I move to strike, insert a semicolon, or insert some punctuation there, can't see it, as well as, strike those words, include the words after resources, $3.4 million over the next 5 years, and $1.3 million for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and FF&E. The next whereas, strike that in its entirety. On the back, well, after that, add a whereas with the limited resources to fund current operations, the district supports a modified funding proposal requiring a $10.5 million upfront investment with a $7.7 million being contributed to the project over the next 13 years. And whereas if the construction project is under its estimated budget of $24 million at completion, the district would reduce its financial support by the same amount. And whereas if the construction project exceeds its estimated budget of $24 million, the district would expect the borough to cover cost overruns. And then in the therefore be it resolved, strike the $13.5 million and replace it with $10.5 million, and then add the sentence after MatSu Central School, phrase, excuse me, with $7.7 million being paid to the borough over 13 years following the completion of the project. And that's my...
Member Berge, with that also, your resolution or your amendment would also include an update to the title, right, where it says 13.5, changing to
Yes. Yes, it would.
Okay, all right. Wonderful. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we'll move into discussion of the amendment that's currently on the table as by Member Berge. Conversation, discussion in relation to second member Probasco.
Yeah, through the chair to Deputy Superintendent Polk. These amendments, were they shared with the MatSu Central Academic Advisory Council?
Not to my knowledge, I don't believe that these amendments were shared with, sort of. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a conversation.
Principal Stacey McIntosh, would you like to come up and speak to that?
Hi, Stacey McIntosh, Principal MatSu Central. We had our ABC meeting yesterday, and Member Berge was there, and just afterwards had stopped me and mentioned that he was going to possibly have some amendments to these resolutions. I didn't hear it in full, but I did just now.
Any other questions? Member Larson.
We're having a discussion on the resolution that's in front of us, correct? I'm sorry. Well, our original deal, although it was a handshake deal, and the borough manager was absolutely correct, there was nobody that voted on it at the time. But when two boards get together, make a decision together, that's a deal. And so this amendment kind of falls alongside the whole issue where we said 10.5 and go out to bond on the remaining remaining amount. Where I could see this going is the MatSu Borough School District may not end up paying all that out of its funds, because as the bond, as the bond, the mega bond drops down, and we still have 1% or one tax levy, it might be able to be picked up that way through taxes, because we do have that. So this is sort of on the same line, and I have to agree with the fact that no more money comes out of our budget for this. Also, I want to, somewhere in there, if you can make a statement that if this gets approved, this is one time and one time only, and that the school board and the Borough Assembly do not look at the school board to build any more facilities. This is not our job. Our job is to run programs. The borough owns the buildings. So because there's other buildings that are up front, ready to go, and are looking for finances. Our money comes from the state again, and from the borough and from the feds. It's strictly money to run programs. We're a service organization that does not own the buildings that they're in. So, in spirit, I guess, on this, I would like to make sure that this board somehow agrees, although we can't speak of future boards, that we don't build buildings. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Member Robertson. Member Glasgow?
Yeah, through the chair to Deputy Superintendent Paul. This resolution, I read through under non-action items, we have our legislative priorities. And under page 3, under capital requests, number 1 is new school construction for MatSu Central School, $18,200. Is it still the intent of the district to pursue funding for MatSu Central as a form of reimbursement?
Yeah, through Chair. That's what administration is recommending as one of the legislative priorities. So it could be, if the board were to move forward with this plan of $10.5 million up front, with $7.7 million being repaid over the next 13 years, the total money the district is committing to is $18.2 million. So it's still at $18.2 million. And so the idea is to seek legislative funding support for the construction of MatSu Central. If anything that comes our way, then it will help support our operating budget, because in essence, these resources did come from our operating budget. They would be, any legislative appropriation would be used to replenish that.
Member Underwood?
I have a question for clarification. If we vote in favor of passing both of these resolutions tonight, when would the construction be able to begin? And if it didn't go through, how long would that be waited for?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if, because we're discussing the amendment on the table, is including the FF&E portion into resolution 23-002. If that were to be approved by the board, then we could essentially, the board could eliminate 23-003 altogether. So that would be, so we would have one resolution, I guess, to answer the first part of that question. Second part is that we anticipate the design being completed in March 2023, so this coming March. And the idea would be that we would look to the borough to issue a construction contract shortly thereafter, so that we could break ground this summer. If it's delayed another year, that will just add to the time period, which, we may have to extend the lease. Yeah, the idea is that as soon as possible after that design is complete, March 2023, the Borough Assembly would have the funding they need in place to issue a construction contract that meets the requirements of the construction drawings.
And so the resolution being passed this evening, is that going to delay the construction, or is this just about the amendment sets, just for verification?
Yeah, the MatSu Borough has a fund verification process, so they can't issue a contract unless they have the funds in hand. So this $10.5 million is essential for that fund verification process. We've had, in different discussions with the borough, we've heard that they have enough funds on hand to where they could make the upfront payment for the remainder, knowing that the school district has the intent to repay that over time. So action tonight would make sure that it wasn't the school board that delayed the project, if you will. Of course, it's going to require subsequent action by the Borough Assembly. And yes, because the lease expires June 30th, 2024, time is of the essence, and we'd like to, administration recommends moving forward on this so that we could avoid an extension of that lease agreement.
Training. Mr. Superintendent, with the way the resolution is written, I mean, what is it, and I know this was kind of touched on, but just for my own clarification, how, and I know you don't know exactly, but how do you foresee the Borough Assembly dealing with this resolution once it gets before them? And this is crystal ball.
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting process.
Point of order.
Please, Member Berge.
Mr. President, we're debating the motion to add to, not the general content of the resolution.
Right, in the motion that has been put before us that amends what has been previously discussed is what it is that I'm looking for some clarification on so that we don't keep teeing back and forth between the Assembly and us, right? Like I'd love to be able to put something together that we know once it's sent over there, that we have a good idea. Like I said, we don't know what the Assembly is going to say, but whether or not anything has been addressed with any Assembly members or the Borough Manager in relation to some of these recommendations that are before.
So your question to Mr. Folk would be, how would these changes be received at the?
Absolutely, if we want to word it that way, then that's all I'm trying to get down and drill to. So how would these questions be received? More crystal ball. Just kidding, just in general.
Yeah, this is an interesting process, one that none of us have been a part of here at the school district, where the Borough Assembly and the school district are trying to fund school construction outside of the normal school bond debt reimbursement program, general obligation bond issuance. Typically, on a project like that, the school boards just make a recommendation that general obligation bond be issued and then debt reimbursement project commence for certain projects. Here we have kind of a back and forth discussion. We have a proposal from the manager, so it came from administration at the borough level, but that proposal never received official action by the Borough Assembly. So it was discussed, Assembly members discussed it after they voted not to put forth MatSu Central as a ballot question, and they discussed it, and then the manager moved forward with writing us a letter as a proposal. But there was never an agreement. There's only the discussion in joint meetings, of course. This would be kind of the back and forth that would need to occur between the two bodies. So I can't tell you exactly what the Borough Assembly will do with this, but what this would demonstrate, if it passes, is that it has school board support. This is a proposal, it's a counter proposal, if you will, but the board supports it, and then the Assembly would know, okay, they weren't fully interested in the proposal that our manager sent to district administration, but this is a part of that negotiating process between the two bodies, and this resolution is essentially just letting them know what key tenets the school board would like to see in any type of proposal.
Thank you.
if this resolution goes through, this is the first time this board will actually vote on the construction of MatSu Central. And it will simply send the message to the Borough Assembly, since we can't seem to get together to negotiate it, our thoughts about the money that's allocated to us and the money that we should be utilizing for programs and courses, not for buildings. So at least I guess it's a middle ground. The 10.5 was used, of course, for Houston twice, once for its shortfall when they went to build it, the other was for the agricultural, the design build of it. And it was given back to us by FEMA. So this is probably a good fit for this, but this will send that message to the borough. And they will send the message that there is no other money available, just to pick up and say, hey, you got the money, can we use it?
Any other board comment on the proposal that has been put forth? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move to a vote on Member Bergey's amendments to the resolution. Again, with this, we are, a yes vote will support the amendments that Member Bergey has put forth, and no vote will fail, and we will be back to the original resolution that's before us that we're discussing. So with that, we'll go ahead and move to vote. Is there any questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead. Member Larson.
Yes.
Member Bergey.
Yes.
Member Probasco.
Yes.
Member Underwood.
Yes.
Member Taylor.
Yes.
Member Hart.
Yes.
And I do vote yes. So with that, that resolution and the amendment thereof passes, and we will now, give me 1 second. Since that, that passes, we have action item. Okay, very good, thank you. So what we'll do is move to discussion on the main motion before us, which is to now adopt this resolution that's been put forth as an improvement burden.
Mr. President, I move to add 2 additional whereases onto the main resolution. Let me
Please.
read my motion. First one is whereas MatSu Borough and MatSu Borough School District both make similar funding requests for the to the Alaska Legislature for the construction funds for MatSu Central School. And then the second whereas will be whereas any funds received by the MatSu Borough from state or federal sources will be used to replenish the 10.5 million.
Can you go ahead and read both of those one more time?
Okay. First whereas, the MatSu Borough and the MatSu Borough School District both make similar funding requests to the Alaska Legislature for the construction funds for MatSu Central School.
Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take I wanna take a 3-minute recess so that we can circulate that and we can see what it is that you're saying. So we'll just go ahead and take 3 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Correct any spelling or grammar that you may find. We're taking this handshake and putting it out there. And the second one is after we already. I know,
Amazing how fast this place empties out.
It'd be interesting to see what the borough does once this resolution goes up to the.
Because my fear, because we didn't have that with FEMA.
I don't care, you know, it's kind of like a handshake. They agreed that any money coming back from FEMA, if the money came back from FEMA, they would reimburse it.
Because we had that right.
We had it in writing, the same thing here. They can always throw it out. They don't have to do that.
But if they blew it out,
They wouldn't throw out the deal. They would just throw out to that we're at. But because it's a resolution and they make the final vote on anything.
it puts it in place the way that if we're gonna put up all the 24 million between the two of us. If the state comes forward with 10 million after they build the school, we want our money back.
And you gotta
So
remember.
they're not building something.
You also gotta remember, right, anything we ask the borough, they can listen to or throw out. We can't, you know, that, again, when we all laugh about it, but again, we're not in weather. It's our subcommittee. We're an advisory, so they don't have to listen to nothing. That they do, yeah. Yeah, and they don't understand that fact that we got 19,000 kids. They have, all they look at and say, look, all this money you have.
We're sitting on money.
We're sitting on money.
And our fundraisers and one significant vandalism.
Yeah.
Election had insurance, heating system going out.
All right, so we'll go ahead and go back on the record for recess. So the motion has been put forth by Member Berkey. We do have it typed out so that we can see it, but in order to be able to see it, we need a second. So is there a second proposed resolution which Member Berkey put forth? Second. Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and here we go. The two motions, is this the first motion or the second motion? The whole thing, wonderful, all right. So remember, we're currently in discussion right now. A motion to add 2 additional sentences. Therefore, be it resolved that MatSu Borough and MatSu Borough School District both make similar funding requested from the Alaska Legislature for construction funds for MatSu Central. Therefore, be it resolved that any funds received by the MatSu Borough from state and federal sources will be used to replenish the 10.5 million for use in future school construction. Is that accurate? Member Brady?
I would strike the, for use for future school construction.
Okay. And then you're saying, so remove that, delete for use for future school construction, and put a period after 10.5 billion. Period.
Correct.
And, okay, so that would reflect the motion that you put forth.
Correct, that as written would reflect the intent of the motion that I put forth, yes.
Okay, and then with that, where are you proposing that those therefores go, or do you have a preference somewhere after the whereases, or do you have a preference on?
It could be after the whereases, and then before the last therefore it be resolved.
Okay, in the order that has been put forth.
Yeah.
With that, is there any discussion? Member Taylor?
I would request in that last little bit where it says, therefore be it resolved that any funds received by MS by the borough from state or federal resources, I would recommend putting in there related to these requests above. Otherwise, it reads like any money from the state or federal government they would give to us. But are we saying that from the request that we make, any money received by the borough because of those requests come back to us? Or just any money received from the state and federal government?
So with that, I mean, that's, you're not putting forward an amendment, right? You're clarifying, like asking the maker of the motion how that would work.
I would have a discussion to the person to put forward to them, Member Berge, to maybe change his motion to stipulate where that money, you know, that money's earmarked where it comes from.
I And I would be favorable to that because my intent was whatever request that we make of the state and federal delegation, I don't see any other funding sources that, I can't imagine any others, but my intent is for the state. And that was my intent, is for previous state.
So just again to clarify, the intent here is that any funds received by the MatSu Borough from state or federal sources specifically for this project, or?
Correct, for this project.
In what
That would
case?
that would clarify that.
Okay, what case would they do that? Like, or what case would the borough receive state or federal funds specifically
If
for
in our
this?
request, that we go for our legislative request forward, and then we go to the legislature and say, please include 24 million for the construction of MatSu Central. We will have already dedicated our funds to that. So when the legislature, if they approve that or part of it in their 22-23 capital budget, and those monies flow down to the borough, that those monies flow to us. And then I didn't specify in there a federal ask, because I don't know if that's appropriate for us. We've never, as long as I've been on the board, we've never requested a federal ask, but if we have to put that language in there as well to cover bases, then we do that. But I just wasn't anticipating a federal ask.
So then are you therefore putting forth a motion to put forth this project?
Okay, well, I will amend the amendment to acquiesce to Member Taylor's comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm gonna go ahead and take a vote on adding for this project so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. We're gonna take a vote for that, for this project. Member Taylor.
Yes.
Member Underwood.
Yes.
Member Berge.
Yes.
Member Larson.
Yes.
Member Probasco.
Yes.
Member Hart.
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So we've now added for this project. Now we're gonna go ahead. Is there any further discussion on the two additional sentences that are proposed before us? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and vote on that then, and that's the motion with therefore be resolved as written in front of us.
We're on this motion.
We're currently going to take a vote to add, therefore be it resolved that MatSu Borough School District will basically we're funding request for the Alaska legislative construction funds to the MatSu Central, therefore be it resolved that any funds received by the MatSu Borough from state or federal sources for this project will be used to replenish the $10.5 million. A yes vote will add that to the resolution that we updated. So with that, Member Larson, is there any questions? No. Member Larson?
Yes.
Member Berge?
Yes.
Member Probasco?
Yes.
Member Underwood?
Yes.
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Member Hart?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. Now, what we have before us is the overall resolution as it has been amended with the last two motions that have amended it. So with that, are there any questions in relation, or is there any discussion? Please, Member Taylor.
I just want to point out a couple of things that did come from this whole thing that I appreciate the borough doing. One was they lowered the penalty on property taxes for everybody, which I feel like would be will have a direct effect on some of our students who struggle financially, so I appreciate that. But also they pointed out how adopting this will save us money in the long run. And so I appreciate knowing that. It makes it a lot easier. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and vote on this. So with that, Member Larson,
Yes.
Member Berge,
Yes.
Member Probasco,
Yes.
Member Underwood,
Yes.
Member Taylor,
Yes.
Member Hart,
Yes.
and I too vote yes. Therefore, passes unanimous. With that, action item B and action item C have both been addressed in the amendments that have been put forth. So we will now move to action item 9D, which has been amended to the fiscal year 2023 fall budget revisions. With that, Mr. Cole. Oh, I'm so sorry. We need to put forth a motion in order to hear fiscal year 2023 fall budget revisions. Is there a motion?
I move to approve action item A, fiscal year 2023 fall budget revision.
Second.
Is there an administrative report?
The administrative report was provided at your last meeting. There's no further information to provide with the fall revision. If there's questions from the school board, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Are there any questions of Mr. Folk?
Maybe a question, through the chair to Associate Deputy Superintendent Folk, is pertains to the budget and busing. We're finding them, correct? Or they're not being compensated for what they would be if everything was up and running, all 140 buses, is that accurate?
Yes, through the chair, that's correct. Member Probasco, any services that are not performed are not paid for under the contract, so we pay a daily bus rate, and it's structured to where there's services not rendered that we don't pay for those buses on that particular day. So there are pretty stiff financial penalties, if you will, just for the failure to perform all routes for the first month of school, and we foresee this continuing. So Durham is, there are consequences for what the performance that we've seen so far. In addition to that, we have within the contract agreed upon liquidated damages for any late bus routes, anytime staff have to be out of the building, operations staff, and if they're required to drive the bus. There's a number of different LDs specified, and those will be assessed according to the contract.
So, for transparency purposes, there's really no way to put a figure on just, 8 weeks into the first quarter of the school year, how much has Durham been fined? You don't need to answer, I'm curious.
So at this time, Member Probasco, what we do is we work through monthly billing with Durham, and at this point, we've only received billing for services through August. So through the end of August, we have not received their September billing. And at this point, we have not paid the August bill. We are still in correspondence for discussions with our own legal counsel, as well as Durham, as to exactly what is the appropriate cost to be incurred by the district for the month of August. I can tell you it's far below what we budgeted for. And once that is, those discussions are resolved and we come to agreement on what we will pay and what we will not pay for the month of August, we will certainly make that information available to the board and any interested members of the public.
Thank you. Are there any other, please, Member Rose.
Was there any talk about the different routing for the school? Like the different plans that we were talking about, is that anything that to do with the budget revision?
Not at this time, but we can address that in the superintendent's update.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing here none, we'll go ahead and take the vote. With that, Member Larson,
Yes.
Member Brady,
Yes.
Member Probasco.
Yes.
Member Underwood.
Yes.
Member Taylor.
Yes.
Member Hart.
Yep.
And I too vote yes. Therefore, that passes unanimously. With that, we'll move to agenda item 10A, which is the superintendent update, which also includes the fiscal year 2023 legislative priorities, seemingly all this 10A. With that, I would move to Mr. Folk.
Thank you, President Ponder. So during the superintendent report, I am going to have the assistance of Associate Superintendent Everett, and he's going to lead us through a lot of the instructional items. I will begin the superintendent report with just a brief overview. We have legislative update. Ben Moore will be providing that, and then we're going to speak briefly about the enrollment. And I thought that there was some busing slides in here as well, so if there are, we'll discuss that in addition to a couple of other items. So if Ben Moore is online, Ben, now is your time to give a legislative update.
I am online, thank you very much. Thanks Mr. Polk for that, and President Ponder, thank you for a moment of your time this evening. Not a whole lot of action on the legislative front right now, as most legislators are focused primarily on running their campaigns. So a little bit of note on campaigns, or at least on the election. For those that are paying attention or who are interested, the last day to register to vote is going to be October 9th for the November 8th election. Mail-in ballots are going to be used. Mail-ins will be used as Department of Election. Postmarks on election day, November 8th, so they're due by November 23rd, which means certification of the election is targeted for right around November 29th. So for races subject to the new ranked choice system, that is any race where candidates have 50% of votes, we won't know the outcome until around or shortly after Thanksgiving. This could come into play in some races in MatSu, but also at the administration level, so the governor's office. I bring this up not because I'm here to provide a civics lesson or anything, but to let you know that you're planning on agenda item 10B is actually spun off this evening. Picking up the priorities this early on allows us to have a longer amount of time to reiterate that this is going to be developed for elected officials going forward. It's also going to give us time to coordinate our requests with allies. Those allies may include MatSu Borough or other school districts who share our concerns on issues like BSA or student transportation. This also gives us time to engage with local officials and the administration. We're looking forward to doing that in December once the elections are all satisfied and certified. But what we would like to do is take the priorities that are going to be developed by the board in the coming weeks and really bake those into whatever strategies our representatives are going to have managed for how they're going to get out of town. Many legislators, as they arrive in Juneau, put together what they call a get out of town plan. What are the must-haves that they see in order to pass budget and get out of town? It's our hope to include as many MatSu School District priorities in that adjournment package as possible. Just a quick note, we have reviewed item 10B and note that it does show consistency with previous priorities, recognizes cost drivers, consistent trends, and includes a mix of large and mid-sized asks for legislation. We feel reasonable with and look forward to the upcoming presentation and any board activity you may have. And once these priorities are set, we look forward to advocating vigorously on behalf of the school district. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions for board members?
Through all the candidates that are running, is the school issue being talked about at all in any of these candidates, such as the BSA, capital improvement, and the deficit that so many of the school districts are facing?
Yes, it is an item of note, particularly those legislators that are running in the big five school districts around the state. The busing issue that we have in MatSu is also echoed in Anchorage and in Fairbanks, and to a limited extent on 59. So these issues are being talked about on the campaign trail, and on those who are planning on legislation next year, there's already talk of what can they do to increase funding in those spaces. So it is a topic of conversation on this.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Moore. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll move on to just an enrollment update. Every year we talk about the budget, we talk about the enrollment numbers because they play such an important part in the revenue picture for the district, and they drive state funding. With the enrollment, there's a 20-day count period that ends the fourth Friday of the month. It actually started Monday, so it started October 3rd and it runs through October 28th this year, ending on the fourth Friday of the month. You can see on the slide before you the enrollment update as of Wednesday, October 5th today. We have current enrollment of 19,207.5 students and a projected enrollment of 19,233. That's a difference of 25.5 students. We're very close to what we had projected. One important thing to keep in mind is that initial projection we had of 19,233 did include a projection of 300 students for Connect Charter School. In your fall budget revision, you recognize that we were reducing that from 300 to 130 students. So with the charter schools, we have a cohort survival method for all district schools, but with the charter schools specifically, we rely on them to give us a projection in the spring. Connect Charter, being that it was their first year of operation, they over-projected a little. We've adjusted. But what that means for us as a district is that if Connect Charter did project 130 students, which is the number they're serving today, our total projection would have been 19,063, in which case we are about 144 students over that projection at 19,207. So as a district, in terms of district operation, we have exceeded our projected enrollment for FY23. On the screens, a couple of slides show you the breakdown of regular enrollment and correspondence funding. For correspondence students, you have 85 in person and then 15% correspondence. This is very similar to what we had last school year. And then if we move forward with the next slide, you can see the largest variances in that charter school area, and that is a result of Connect Charter School for the most part. So, I'll turn it over to Mr. Everett.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cole. Good evening again. Reese Everett, Associate Superintendent of Instruction. Wanted to highlight a particular board policy and state statute that many of us as parents in the school district have seen notifications from our children's school. In 2017, the Alaska State Legislature passed the Alaska State Children's Act. You may also know that as Aaron's Law and Bree's Law. Correspondingly, Board Policy 6142.02 is the board policy requiring that the school system in grades K through 12, as you can see before you, for students to receive sexual abuse and sexual assault awareness training and dating violence and abuse awareness training on an annual basis. And so you see before you sexual abuse, sexual assault awareness, grades K through 12, and then specifically for our secondary students in grades 7 through 12, dating violence and abuse awareness. I'd like to bring your attention to the first bullet in both of those columns regarding parent notification. Administrative Regulation 6020 does require a minimum of 2 weeks notification for parents to be notified, directed to curriculum and content, which is available on the instruction website, on what students will be, what will be covered in those lessons. Parents certainly have the right to opt their children out. That process is lined out in that final bullet you see there in writing by contacting their school's principal. And then you see, I won't read in depth every one of those bullets there. So grades K through 5 specifically, and I'll pause at the end of the Alaska State Children's Act before I get into 4C's content for any questions that you may have. So specifically grades K through 5, there's an outline of what happens at each grade level. The Great Body Shop is the curriculum that is utilized in our schools. I believe that's been around for 7 or 8 years. And so you can see for our elementary age students, again, in accordance with state statute, and there's information there that anyone can look up, both on Department of Education and Early Development's website, as well as the MatSu Borough School District's website. Grades 6 through 12, Alaska State Children's Act, a secondary school action plan, just outlining the timeline that we're currently on. Information was sent to all of our secondary school leaders with follow-up information. I'm going to talk quite a bit about the 4 C's in a little while, but the first reference that time during the day allows our schools, our educators, our counselors to be able to make sure that we're in compliance with state statute in regard to the Alaska Safe Children's Act. Prior to that time, it was often challenging to make sure that our requirements were met on an annual basis, that those lessons were delivered. They are the best fit, if you will, in terms of curriculum would be in health classes, but health in high school is only required 1 credit, so typically freshmen take health, but it's not a requirement beyond that, and then often in middle school, students don't have health on a regular basis. So 4 Cs is the natural place for these required lessons to be delivered. They're delivered over about 4 or 5 class periods during the 4 Cs, and that fulfills our requirement according to state law to make sure that our students receive this information. And I'll pause there before I turn it back over to Deputy Superintendent Folk if there's any questions specific to the Alaska Safe Children's Act.
Any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Larson.
Just a curiosity question. We've struggled to meet this, and we made the attempt to meet it, and it sounds like we're going to with 4 Cs. What happens if you just refuse to do it? Or what kind of, is there anything in the state law that they would say they would do anything? Or I'm just wondering, it's just kind of curiosity.
Through the chair to Member Larson, state statute, state law passed by the legislature in the position that I currently have means that I have to do my best to make sure that we're in compliance with that.
A good answer, thank you.
Mr. Everett, 2 questions. Is there an administrative regulation requiring a uniform mode of notification? In other words, while there's a parental notification requirement, is that notification being done in the same form in every school?
Yeah, thank you for the question, President Ponder. And I don't have the AR memorized, and I can certainly follow up in the next board meeting. But I believe there's a menu of options specifically in the AR. Could be newsletter, could be Blackboard notification. It outlines notification. I don't believe the AR specifies that it has to be via newsletter and newsletter only, but notification. And then I believe that, if I'm picturing it correctly, it gives some options. Could be Blackboard Connect, and an email to parents. It could be in a newsletter. So a variety of medium, if you will, for notification.
And the only reason I ask is just based off the fact that, I mean, with a handful of students within the district, there's modes of communication that are coming in all forms, right? Whether it's via email, text updating that there's been an email, newsletters coming home, and I'm just wondering, I mean, parental notification is definitely a good thing. It's a great thing. It's an exceptional thing that needs to happen, but it's one of those things that, you know, if your kids are coming home telling you and you're finding out about it because you missed it somewhere in the 15 emails that came out, I just look at it, and that's why I asked about the administrative regulation in relation to perhaps one way of being notified would be a good thing. But the other one is, who provides these trainings in the different schools? Is it the teacher that provides the training? Is it individuals within the schools that provide the training? I mean, who is it that's coming and talking to the kids, kindergarten students or 3rd graders or 5th graders?
To President Bonner, the question, staff members could be the student's teacher, could be a school counselor, a certified staff member. So to say specifically that every single teacher, I know in some of our secondary schools, counselors assist with some of those lessons. If a student by chance misses a day, they may receive the lessons from a counselor, whereas maybe their classroom peers receive the lesson from their teacher. So a certified staff member would be the best answer.
Gotcha. Okay. And for trainings like this that children are receiving, I know that a lot of schools have smart boards, but do all schools have smart boards?
I believe so. I'm looking at Deputy Superintendent Folk. I believe, yes, they do. They have some sort of digital display, whether it's a smart board or the ability to screencast. Yes.
And I'm going somewhere with that question, and it's based off the fact of being able to, have parental participation, right? From a virtual sense of being able to watch, not to participate vocally or anything, or audio, but just to be able to participate in, so that there can be a team effort here where kids are being taught about sexual abuse and sexual assault, and then if parents wanted to watch it, then they could carry that conversation on, as opposed to just more than one time. Something like this, with this situation, it's, in my opinion, something that we can't stop warning our children about, right? One time checks a box, it's a statute, but if there was a means for parents to participate by even, by listening in, I think it would probably hit the intent of the statute even further. So anyway, any other member Berkey?
Mr. Everett, the state knows every certified staff member in the district who's complied with training. How does the state know that the students are compliant? How do we report that, or how does the state capture that information?
Through the chair to member Birdie, I am unaware of a reporting requirement specifically on, an analytics page that is required to be sent to the state. The statute specifies that all students, unless their parent or guardian has provided notification that they'd like to be opted out, need to receive this training on an annual basis. The specificity of the state requirement, I don't believe says you need to, here's how you prove it, essentially. The statute requires it, and then as the district, we're responsible then for compliance.
So we're telling the state that we're doing the best of our ability to comply, and that's as far as we need to go.
As far as I know, yes.
Thank you.
Member Underwood?
Question, are the modules and the lessons that are here on the links, is that exactly what is being shown and taught? Is it like a specific presentation that is just universal, that a parent can watch it prior to the student being taught, there will be nothing added or taken away or anything like that?
Yeah, through the chair to member Underwood, that is correct. And those modules are available either on the Department of Education and Early Development at the state level, or via our instruction page in the health curriculum. It outlines K-5, Alaska Safe Children's Act, grades 6 through 8, AK Safe Children's Act, and then grades 9 through 12.
Any other comments? All right, thank you.
All right, shifting gears, if you will. Mr. Folk.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. The transportation update that we want to provide today is really something that we're quite excited about, is that Durham is making significant progress towards filling the bus driver shortage. So right now they have 17 drivers in training. That's the most they've had all year at one time. They've had 7 graduated since the start of the school year. They have 2 drivers testing today. They have 2 drivers testing today, 2 tomorrow, and 2 on Friday, and 1 on Saturday. So they are continuing to fill driver roles. They have pretty aggressive recruitment efforts ongoing. They've added a full-time recruiter specifically for the Wasilla location. There's a $2,500 signing bonus for credentialed school bus drivers, a $1,500 signing bonus for non-credentialed drivers, $1,500 referral bonus for any Durham or school district employee, with no limitation on the number of referrals. And that's for credentialed drivers, $1,000 referral bonus for non-credentialed drivers. So there's a lot going on. We're encouraged by this. And one of the things that this will allow us to do is we have a commitment from Durham that they will have enough drivers by October 24th to run one route cancellation per week for all bus routes. Currently, we have 2 cancellations per week for each bus route, and it'll be, I think, a huge relief to many family members and parents in the community to know that they only have to make accommodations for 1 day a week moving forward. The other thing that the schedule of 1 day a week allows us to do as a district, just operationally, is that we organize that cancellation around secondary schools. So that means all of the feeder elementary schools are canceled on the same day. Currently, we have some overlap with 2 cancellations per day with the Colony schools and the Wasilla schools, so it's possible that a parent might have a child at Pioneer Peak as well as Colony Middle, and their cancellations don't fall on the same day of the week. It's just how it works out when you have 2 cancellations per week. And we organize it by elementary. It's not as clean, but if we can get it down to 1 cancellation per week, we can do it by area on a more straightforward basis. And so it's organized around secondary schools, and then it impacts all the feeder schools. It's what we had last fall and in the first couple weeks of school as well. The idea is not to stop there, of course. We hope to return to full service in November. We don't have a specific date for that yet. We want to make sure we meet that first milestone with Durham. If Durham, it does, I guess the commitment they made is if they don't have enough drivers hired and trained from the Wasilla location, they are going to fly in additional drivers to maintain 1 route cancellation per week starting October 24th. Any questions on busing? I guess this would be a good time.
Okay, Mr. Pope, a couple of questions. When you talked about credentialed versus not credentialed, is that, from my understanding, you have to be employed with a bus company in order to have a bus endorsement. So anybody who's not employed would be non-credentialed. So is that, help me understand that for the general public too, so they know who would fit into that classification, unless the rules have changed since I've gotten my bus endorsements.
The credentialed drivers are CDL holders with school bus endorsement. So it's potentially someone who's driven school bus before and is not currently employed by a bus contractor.
So who's previously held the endorsement?
Who's held the endorsement previously.
Okay, I understand that. And secondly, you know, reading here, we're looking at reinstate half of the current runs. Are we trickling drivers in as they become available, or are we just waiting till the 24th and then mass change hits the district? I'm not, I only see just a small microcosm of the district, so I don't know, are we slowly alleviating, or are we going to have one mass rollout on the 24th?
Yeah, that's a good question, Member Berkey. There's really not a way to phase in fewer cancellations during the week between what we currently have and 1 cancellation per week. There's a lot of coordination that goes on between the district transportation staff and Durham to coordinate the weekly schedules and assignments for specific bus drivers as to which routes they will drive for each day of the week. So, and then in addition to that, we know that if we were to do something in between, it would impact, there wouldn't be an equal impact across the district. It would be, you know, one area having full bus service or 1 cancellation, another area having 2. So it'd be tough. We know the number we need to get to have 1 cancellation per week, and we're fairly close, and we know that within a matter of just a few weeks away that we'll have that.
So we're modifying schedules on a weekly basis as drivers become available. Did I hear that, or are we waiting until the 24th?
No, we're waiting for the 24th. Those drivers that do become credentialed are going to work right away, however. I mean, they're available to drive. We have a number of standby drivers that are necessary for any day-to-day call-outs. They might be a sub-driver on a route. They might not have a regular assignment, but they will certainly be helping the operation. And then when we do have 130 buses running each day, which is 1 cancellation per week, they will have an assigned route, and it will be permanent. They'll have the same schedule throughout the week.
Thank you.
What we talked about earlier with Pioneer Peak, possibly down at Wolford and some of those other locations where we have.
Great. We had a really good conversation with the borough during the joint committee meeting on Monday. Don't want to steal Member Berkey's thunder on this. I imagine you'll give a committee update later in the meeting. Okay. We discussed, one of the things that we discussed was priorities around bus traffic circulation, traffic flow at schools, and a priority for which school should get attention first based on the volume of traffic and kind of the impacts that we're seeing right now where we do have a bus cancellation at a particular school. And where we're really seeing the congestion is at the elementary schools. Those parking lots and drop-off loops were just simply not designed for 500 students arriving at the same time, and no buses transporting those students to the school site. So I guess in terms of a process, we have a number of district staff who are working closely with borough staff on safe routes to school, and that committee is meeting regularly. As a part of what they are discussing in those committee meetings, it's not just pedestrian amenities for students walking to school, but they're also discussing those on-site improvements that might be necessary for vehicle circulation. And so for instance, a Pioneer Peak Elementary, a Shaw Elementary, those schools are already being discussed about what modifications or improvements or upgrades need to be made to their school site, and some of the engineering and cost estimating has already been done at the borough, and we were able to discuss that with the borough manager, the borough mayor on Monday, as well as Assembly Member Nowers, and it comes down to funding for that, but it certainly could be incorporated in a future CIP transfer by the school board, or we could seek additional funding support from the borough to fund those projects over time. But the prioritization of them and the ideas around what needs to be done to make those improvements, that was discussed on Monday, and I anticipate that will be an ongoing discussion until those improvements are made.
Mr. Ford, how many of the other larger school districts are having issues with the bus driver shortage?
This is a nationwide issue.
And are you aware, I've seen that it being a nationwide issue, that other states, governors have called out the National Guard to drive buses. Do you know whether or not that's been proposed to our governor at all?
My understanding is that was on the table early on. It was a part of the discussion. There was actually, the ADN covered that in an article, I believe. And there was some restriction or limitation to the ability for the Guard to take on those responsibilities for Anchorage School District and or the MatSu School District. But I do know that those discussions did occur towards the beginning of the school year.
So that is something that's been discussed. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Member Larson?
No, if we're done with this, I don't have a,
Okay, good deal. So we go ahead and proceed with 4Cs.
are we done with this?
We're done with the transportation update.
Then I would like to suspend the rest of the superintendent's update and move on to the other B and C items, as well as the persons to be heard. We only have 35 minutes left for our meeting, unless we extend the clock.
With that, Member Larson, I wouldn't disagree, and we put that for the board, but I do know that there's a number of individuals that have asked and requested it in relation to the credits and the 4Cs, and Dr. Trainee did put something together in relation to the same. Are you, Member Ford, are you presenting, or Member, Mr. Everett, you're presenting on the 4Cs? So that was prepared, it was planned for you to do so, and are you doing so in the absence of Dr. Trainee?
I'm the substitute, but I feel very confident that I can almost do as proficient a job as Dr. Trainee.
Okay, and so, Member Larson, can we push to the 4Cs, or are you?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. With respect to time, I will, there are several slides, but I'll try and be efficient, but as thorough as possible. So 4Cs, as President Ponder brought up, has been a topic of conversation. This slide is a screenshot of a survey that we received from, or a particular response we received from a community member that created the survey and received, as you can see, 425 responses, and an overwhelming percentage of respondents indicated they would be concerned that with the 25.5 credits in 25 hours. And so, again, I'm speaking for administration, including Dr. Trainee. This requires some nonlinear thinking. And you see that second bullet at the bottom where it says the district does not require more credit than is offered during school hours, and I'll do my best to explain how that works. So 4 C's, as many folks know, stands for credit. That is bolded intentionally, community, career, and college. In and of itself, 4 C's represents about or exactly a quarter credit a year over the course of a student's 4-year high school career. Specifically required beginning in the class of 2025, which would be this year's 10th grade students. So this year's freshmen and this year's sophomores are the only cohorts currently required to have their 4 C's credit. The and is really important, and this is that nonlinear thinking, and multiple opportunities to earn additional credit during the 4 C's. And there's lots of different descriptors that are used. The most frequently used is concurrent. Some would call it stacked enrollments. Some would call it dual enrollment. So think of the same block of time and the ability for students to accomplish a variety of activities according to their interests and, in a lot of cases, according to their academic needs. So classes that can be taken concurrently or stacked on each other, if you will. These are a few examples. Academic strategies is a half-credit elective course. That's a half credit per semester. It is repeatable as many times as a student wants to repeat it. So a student could, during 4 C's, they could earn a full credit in academic strategies their freshman year, a full credit their sophomore year, concurrently with that 4 C's credit as well. That would be applicable for a student who maybe they really, and we heard from a community member this evening that works with some of our struggling learners, some of our students who really need that 4 C's time during the school day just to make sure that they're staying on track in all of their other academic requirements. We would want those students to be concurrently enrolled in an academic strategies class, because that's in essence what that class is. It's time, dedicated time, where they're working with a staff member to make sure that they're staying on track. Lots of other examples there. You notice the V, that does stand for virtual, and I'll have a slide here in just a minute that just gives some data points on the expansion of virtual or e-learning. It's not a one-off anymore. It's a new normal for a variety of careers, and it's important that we believe it's important that our students are exposed to that medium, that modality of learning, whether or not they choose to go to university or a CTE concentrator program where a lot of their training would happen in that e-learning medium. The district offers over 90 virtual courses in Apex and eDynamic. Many of those are AP, some of those are high interest. So there is a variety of courses that students can take concurrently with their 4 C's time during the school day. This slide I mentioned earlier, I won't read through all of it, but just a variety of data points demonstrating the importance of e-learning and virtual learning. We have a lot of students, and I have some data that I'll show you in a minute, that engage in virtual courses while they're in their 4 C's. So a student could be enrolled virtually in a health class or a civics class or an AP class, and they might work on it during 4 C's. They might work on it at home, anywhere they have connectivity. They might also choose one day that they need help in an academic area, a core content area, so they're going to hit pause on that virtual class that day during the 4 C's, and they're going to go seek out that instructor to get that help, whether it's remedial help, credit recovery help, or acceleration help, because we know we have the whole spectrum of students in our district. So, data on the importance of e-learning. This, and I won't go through every column, this is an example of a student, a freshman entering one of our high schools without any early high school credit. So this would be a student who finished their middle school, maybe with our district, maybe outside of our school district, and entered one of our high schools with 0 credits. That would be kind of your standard thought. Most of our students do have early high school credit. Some students don't have any early high school credit. This is an example where they could go through our system in 4 years and earn, as you can see in that bottom right, 27 out of 25 and a half credits. And that's with that concurrent, that stacked idea during the 4 C's. This would be a very standard way for a student without any early high school credit to go through their 4 years and earn more than the required 25.5 credits. I've mentioned, and I'll pause after this slide in case there's questions, I've mentioned early high school credit for middle school students. Students have plenty of opportunity to earn their 25.5 credits, and currently, so this is current as of yesterday, as a matter of fact, we have 978 of our middle school students. Think of each cohort around 12 to 1,400 students. Currently, 978 middle school students are enrolled in high school classes. Most of them are enrolled in more than one high school credit-bearing class. 66% of all middle school students, 2/3, earn high school credit. When they go to their 9th grade, whatever school they attend, 2 out of 3 current middle school students go with early high school credit. And I mentioned that 978 middle school students, many of which are taking more than one high school credit-bearing course. The total is 2,600 classes. So every student, about 2.6 high school credit-bearing courses. Additionally, currently, 1,877 high school students are engaging in what I've talked about, that concurrent or that stacked enrollment, where they're earning their 4 C's credit, that 0.25, that quarter credit a year, plus and academic strategies. They're engaging in a virtual course. So all of those different options right now, about 1,877 students. And a reminder that 4 C's currently is only required for our current freshmen and sophomores. There's a few more slides, but I'll pause right there.
Question? Member Vasquez,
Yeah, just receiving correspondence, emails and also testimony given tonight about, we talk about stacked classes, we talk about 9th and 10th graders coming in and they got 25.5 credits. I've read children, this pressure in 7th and 8th grade, if they're high-performing students, to be completing high school credit in middle school, and what it does, the pressure on a kid, on a child. How do you, I've always felt like, school should be fun, kids should have an opportunity to take a breath every once in a while. But, it sounds like there's a lot of pressure there on this credit race to get them all done. That's a statement, an observation from having read the emails and listened to testimony.
Thank you, Member Berge.
Slides look great, see the intent, but one of the things that I've observed is we've had testimony from parents and students about 4 C's. My own son doesn't really understand the concurrent enrollment. I would say that we've got some messaging issues out there because, in reality, virtual classes, you go to work at Walmart and they've got virtual classes for you to do as part of your employment. Schools are transitioning to online. What we're doing here is we're keeping pace with the way the rest of the world is going, and when our students graduate, they will be able to prepare to move on. But we need to work on our messaging. And I don't have a suggestion on how to do that, but when you have people lined up, and since we brought the 4 C's in, we've had students and parents commenting upon it, and at my own kitchen table. I had a conversation with the superintendent about virtual class, and I went and asked my son about it, and he was like, what? Which, it's a 15-year-old, I understand, I credit that there. But if it were only my son, I would credit my son with that. But I'm hearing from elsewhere, which means that we're not doing a bad thing. We just need to message. And we need to figure out how to message properly until we stop seeing the lines. So, because this is needed, because this is reality that they're going to go into. the multitasking, the virtual classes, that we're not, by ignoring it, we're not preparing them for the future. So, but we just need to message it somehow better. I don't have a solution, I wish I did.
Remember, that's a statement, right? Are you looking for a response?
Correct, that's a statement.
Very good. If you would continue, thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is an example of a student entering one of our high schools with early high school credit. And it's a fair comment, Member Probasco, the pressure on students. I know that wasn't a question, it was a statement. As a parent of a middle school student, I would say that it's most important that our families are having those discussions with their kids and making sure that students are in appropriate level classes, so that partnership between school and home to make sure. And as a father of a middle school student who happens to be in some early high school credit bearing classes, it's definitely a balance of supporting them, challenging them, but making sure to monitor that level of pressure so that it's age and developmentally appropriate. So this has come up quite a bit, the relationship with 4Cs and electives. Currently, our students graduating 2025 have room in their schedule for 7 what we refer to as general electives. A general elective would be a music class, a fine arts class, maybe a foreign language class, a physical education class, could be a CTE class. It wouldn't be another English class. We would refer to another English class as a core elective requirement, so general elective. And so students can choose 7 general electives, and this first bullet is really, really important to point out that prior to the pandemic, so this would be the year 2020, the average senior, and at the time, those seniors, that graduating class, were required to earn 24.5 credits. So 1 credit less than the current class of 2025. So 24.5 credits. Those seniors, on average, and this is an average, so please keep that in mind, earned just over 2 credits their senior year. So as a possible senior in 2020 that could have earned, if they just took their standard credits and didn't do an add-on virtual course, they could earn 7 credits. 7 classes, 7 credits. The average senior earned just over 2. We allowed them to do the minimum, and most, on average, didn't take electives at all. They just didn't take classes. And I'm going to try and echo what Dr. Trainey has said multiple times, that in a lot of cases, people, in this case young people, are like water and electricity. They will take the path of least resistance if given the opportunity. So the effort to increase graduation credit requirements, the effort to have the 4 Cs, is to expect more from our kids because we know they're capable of it if we ask them to do it. Some took a few electives, some students maximized their opportunity in their free and public education, and that's another piece, and I'll move on. But as a public service, public education is funded to provide 13 years of education to our students. And so the fact that prior to 2020, students were taking advantage of just over 12 years of those 13 years of publicly funded education, administratively we believed, and the board supported the shift, that wasn't good enough, that our kids could do more because we know they can do better. And one more piece here, we are currently, this is another thing that's come up, that this AP for All, there is an AP requirement, AP seminar. Just a reminder, the MatSu School District right now is just about the national average of students participating in advanced placement courses. We're about half the national average as a school district. And so administratively, that we know our kids can do better. And so that's the effort that we've been engaging in. Music as an example, I would point out, I don't know if I have Dr. Trainey's permission, but since he's not here, I'll take the liberty. This is Dr. Trainey's son, Zach Trainey, who's an incredibly talented musician. So he included that picture. I'm not sure if he would have mentioned that, but I did. Music as an example, graduating class of 2020, the number of students and the credits they earned specifically in music. So 950 students out of 1,000 that graduated that year didn't earn any credits in music over their 4 years. And then you can see on down the line. Again, an example of the opportunity was there. Many took advantage, but many more didn't take advantage. 85% graduation rate is just not good enough. It's, if you think of rolling a dice, and we were to tell any parent that if you roll a dice and you get a 1, your kid's not going to graduate from high school. That's not good enough. 85%, it's improvement, dramatic improvement, which is outstanding, but it's just simply not good enough. And this is an example of where we're at currently. Right now, 36% of secondary students have 1 or more failing grades. We're not at a quarter yet. We're not at a grading period. This is trend data. It's pretty typical. You can see it's a bit of an improvement over where we were last year. But we know that students having time within the school day to make sure they stay on track, that they have teachers and other adults that are supporting them, we know that's important, and we really use data to guide those decisions. This slide was in here, so I'll do my best to cover it. The question has come up regarding PLC Mondays, so a pretty big shift. I think there's only a couple slides left. The percentage of K-5 students whose families used that early child care for that hour before school on Mondays. Our elementary schools sent out surveys and collected data on families that needed to be able to drop their students off for that hour on Mondays while certified staff were engaging in professional learning communities. This is the percent of students. I believe Dr. Trainey may have shared the 919 data, and this is 2 weeks later, this Monday on October 3rd, almost 2.5% of our K-5 students took advantage of that daycare service at their local elementary school on PLC Mondays. Last slide, good thing, always want to finish on a positive. AP Scholars for the MatSu School District. It's pretty incredible, and you can read over, those are some high-achieving, hard-working students, so we certainly want to celebrate them and all of our students and staff for really the heroic work they do on a daily basis. I will stop talking, pause for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing and hearing none, we'll conclude that. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and conclude item 10A, and we have item 10B, fiscal year 23 legislative priorities. I will put forth a motion just on the off chance to extend the meeting to 10:15. Is there a second?
Second.
With that, we'll go ahead and vote. Member Larson.
No.
Member Berge.
No.
Member Probasco.
Yes.
Member Taylor.
Yes.
Member Underwood.
Yes.
Member Hart.
No.
And I'll vote yes, so it does pass, and we'll move it to 10:15. With that, we will hear if there is there a report on the legislative priorities, and if we can keep that to 7 minutes, that'd be wonderful, or less.
I think I can do this under 7 minutes. Many of the legislative and administrative priorities that the board considered last year are rollover priorities. So the board actually approved legislative priorities, I believe in the December, January timeframe last year, and then we came back before the board for an amended list of priorities as the legislative session was underway, and there was the possibility of perhaps lobbying for funding for MatSu Central and the charter schools. We brought that back before the school board, I believe it was in May. So it hasn't been too long since the board's considered what their state legislative priorities have been and are. And so we took, I guess, administration came up with a draft of those priorities and modified them a bit to either be more accurate cost estimates for some of the capital requests, or just update the language if we were, for instance, the first priority requesting the BSA to be increased in FY 24, 25, and 26 instead of FY 23, 24, and 25. So some minor adjustments. The other thing that is notable is last year the board made the funding of the school bond debt reimbursement program its top priority. They did that with the borough to support the borough in that effort to get funding for the bond debt service that the borough would otherwise have to pay. That funding did come through, so that was an effective strategy to work with the borough and to lobby for that. We have since, because that has been funded, we moved that priority down to number 3, and we modified it a bit to say, instead of funding it, reinstate the school bond debt reimbursement program and to continue to fund past and future school construction projects. So if it's reinstated early, it's currently scheduled to be reinstated July 1st, 2025. If it's reinstated early, it would allow us to pursue general obligation bonds with state reimbursement for those projects that would help us with the board's approved 6-year CIP list. So that is my under 7-minute administrative report.
Thank you, Mr. Fulp. And with that, Member Berkey.
Mr. Fulp, under capital requests, item 1, new school construction for MatSu Central School. If the cost of the school is $24 million, why are we only asking for $18.2?
That's a good question, Member Berkey. I think a couple of these might require a different perspective, and perhaps we need to state the full cost of the project. This was included as 18.2 as solely the district's cost. So under the proposals that were being considered and the one that was adopted this evening as a resolution, the 18.2 is simply the district's portion of the project. It could be $24 million, in which case a portion of that would go back to the borough. So we can modify that.
Member Probasco.
Yeah, through the chair, Deputy Superintendent Fulp, under other priorities, number 1, it says the MatSu Borough School District supports development of a long-term fiscal plan that ensures sustainable education funding for future generations. Included in that, is that forward funding of education too, which I thought the governor just won a lawsuit on that says he doesn't have, he has a right to veto that, or?
Yeah, there's definitely that legislation does impact any forward funding possibilities, but there's still the potential of coming up perhaps with a multi-year funding plan, and if it's done within a specific legislature, so there's 2 years of each legislative session. And if those 2 years are during the term of that governor, it's potential that you could have 2 years in a row without running into that issue of an incoming governor who feels like they inherited something that they don't support. So I still think it's relevant language. It's certainly not speaking to the legal dispute that we observed. And it's looking for the state to come up with some sort of long-term planning, which is a best practice of any government entity, whether federal, state, or local level.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Seeing hearing none, thank you, Member Fulp. We'll go ahead and close out item 10B, fiscal year 23 legislative priorities. We go to 10C, first reading board policy, restrooms changing area use. Mr. Fulp, any report on that?
No administrative reports. It's my understanding the board policy committee met to discuss this.
Is there any statements by the board policy committee in relation to the same? Member Larson.
The policy committee reviewed a lot of policies, and this is one of them. It was reviewed different policies nationally and voiced by our attorney and ran through by our attorneys, I believe. after the meeting. Maybe you have a little bit more knowledge of that.
Do you know if there was any correspondence with our board attorney in relation to this?
I don't know.
Sorry, thank you. We can get a report on that. This is the first review, so for discussion purposes, any discussion, Member Probasco? Yeah.
To the policy committee, number 3 says that, no, number 4. I'm looking more at the one that talks about parent or legal guardian of a student enrolled in the MatSu School District shall have a cause of action against the district for non-compliance with the provisions of section 2. So, definition of cause of action, I guess. Is that like file a lawsuit, or and if they do, are they suing the district or an individual school or an individual teacher? What does that look like?
I wouldn't be able to speak to exactly what they would be bringing, other than they could, it puts in there basically the rights of parents and legal guardians for anything that just states it right there.
And then, through the chair to Deputy Superintendent Bolt, I'm requesting a legal opinion from our attorney. And what I want to know is, does any language or action stemming from such language violate any conditions established under the Family Education and Privacy Act, or FERPA? And specifically the part of FERPA which protects personal identifiable information about students. In regards to who can see that, does it require, well, it does require parental approval to release that information. So I'm just trying to get a picture of what this whole policy is going to look like. People run around with lists of this children can, this children can't. I don't know. I mean, who sees that information? And I'd like to see what our school district's attorney says in writing, because I'm sure he has law cases he can cite and stuff like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Vasco, any other comments in relation or board discussion? Seeing, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close out superintendent report on action items and move to agenda item 11, persons to be heard on non-agenda items. This is a continuation of item 2. We did get to that list. However, with that, if you'd like to go ahead, well, listen, is there anybody that is in the audience that would like to be heard on non-agenda items that hasn't spoken already on the non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll close agenda item 11 and move to agenda item 12, future items, future business. Upcoming meeting, October 19th, 2022, 6 p.m., regular school board meeting here at the central office. I would like to point out, because there was a comment on, giving the word, there was wishful thinking on or a request of getting the word out to students the first and third Wednesday nearly every month at 6 p.m. We have a school board meeting here at the central office, first and third Wednesday of every month. And so October 19th will be the third Wednesday. With that, is there any other upcoming meetings that could be reported? Member Probasco, please.
For informational purposes, on October 12th at 6 p.m. at Career Tech High School, Principal Ross is hosting a public forum with the Department of Transportation, I believe the Borough Planning Department, to discuss and look at the plans for traffic entering and leaving the CTHS Thielen Larson Fronteras campus. What's in the works for the next couple of years? And that is at CTHS on the 12th at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Member Probasco. Any other upcoming? Member Birdie.
So the joint meeting between the borough and the assembly met on Monday, discussed were bus barn, busing, Arctic Winter Games, CIP, vehicle circulation, as Mr. Pope mentioned earlier, SROs were brought up. There was a request that Wasilla PD needed to temporarily suspend their SROs because they were needed for patrol. So they're having some staffing issues there. We discussed Seward Meridian and then looking at moving some charter schools into the CIP. And that was pretty much just.
Thank you. Is there any other wonderful, as far as future items, I will put out there that this board did receive on September 21st a request by the MatSu Charter School Association to hear the matter that was brought up by us by Trinity Bridge. And so that will be a future item, but just wanted to put that out there in relation to the MatSu Charter School Association's request on that, based on the fact that it affects all charter schools. Any other upcoming meetings, future items, future business? No, Larson.
Thank you. For future items, I would like sometime, I don't know, in the future, December, January, it doesn't have to be really quick, probably around January or so. I'd like to see an item brought up for the public process of building MatSu Central School. When we go out for bonding for a school, the public speaks. They either say, yes, we agree that we want you to build these schools, tracks, or like the $200 million bond. And that's why I was kind of excited for MatSu Central to go out for a bond, because the public can speak. We have, both the Borough Assembly and the school district have not allowed the public process to be heard. So what I'm requesting is some sort of survey to go out to the public to make sure, or just to see what the public feels about the school district using their money, $10.5 million in the borough money, to forward fund MatSu Central, and have the public have the process to at least be able to comment. I'm not saying to vote, but at least to send some sort of comment, some sort of survey in there, or some sort of website that's publicized comment to the public, because we've avoided the whole public process.
Larson, any other comments? Seeing none, with that, we will go ahead and close out item 12 and move to item 13, correspondence and board committee reports. Is there any correspondence and board committee reports to be brought forward? Member Larson.
I've already stated my board committee report on the non-action.
Thank you.
So did I.
Member Ruggie as well. Thank you. With that, we'll close out item 13 and move to item 14, comments from the school board and administration. Mr. Fulton, are there any comments from the administration?
No comments.
Thank you. With that, we'll take board comments. We'll just go ahead and start with the student advisory board. Mrs. Chapel. Thank you. Member Larson.
I appreciate the public coming out and testifying. I wish that every meeting had that many people in, and I hope in the future that we will. The public process, Eugene Haberin has always stuck with me. Love the man, and he's correct. To be totally totally transparent, the public process has to be there. And that's what I was just mentioning on future items. It'd just be kind of nice to have the public process on building a $25 million building. Again, I appreciate all the staff presentations and all the hard work that the staff bring forward, and I really do appreciate the public for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ruggie.
I want to thank the public for coming out. It is very enjoyable to see students beginning to exercise the public process. It's a good start. So enjoy hearing what they have to say. Hope that settles in with other folks here. I appreciate the work put forth on the presentations. It is nice to see that information come back forward to us and see where the district is moving from a 30,000-foot view instead of down in the weeds. And with that, I wish everybody a good night and have a safe trip home.
Thank you, Member Brady, Member Carrasco.
Yeah, today, October 5th, it's recognized as World Teachers Day. And with that, I'd like to thank all of our teachers in the school district for the hard work they have been doing, for not just this year, but the last couple of years. And there are all sorts of stressors in our schools. And it was good to see all the students who showed up tonight to testify. I think that's, and they didn't have to, but they wanted to. That shows they value what is going on in our school. Congratulations to the MatSu Central School community and our whole district for moving forward on our new facility. And I do want to thank the parents who put together the survey and sent it out. And I do hope all board members please read it. I found it to be very informative, and like echo Mr. Berge, where he said there seems to be some communication background breakdown as to what's going on and you know what's happening in the schools and what's being brought home, what's being told there. So anyway, thank you for that.
Thank you, Member Carrasco. Member Hart.
I'd like to echo the sentiment about the public coming out to testify. It's always gratifying to see people taking the process seriously. I'd also like to extend a prayer thought for Dr. Trainee and his family for the emergency, and I hope it's safe travels. And so anyway, have a good night.
Thank you, Member Underwood.
Yeah, hard part about going last is to echo everybody else. I also want to thank everybody for coming out. It is nice to see the room filled. Whether agree or disagree, it is the whole point of this process to have people engaged, and it is encouraging to see the room filled and people sharing what is on their hearts. That is what makes this work. So I just want to encourage more people, if you're still online or currently watching the meeting, to get involved and come and let your voices be heard. It is important and it is valued, so I just want to thank everybody for that. And I also want to congratulate MatSu Central, and I'm excited to see what all comes with the new building and no lease anymore, so we're excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Taylor.
Thank you. I feel like it's been a very productive meeting tonight. Many of the questions the public has had, whether it's buses or cities, anything else, was addressed tonight, and I appreciate that. It was great for the public to hear and receive many answers to questions. I just want to voice my support of these changes that are going on. Somebody mentioned tonight that we're one of the lowest ones in testing in the nation. In order for us to rise, changes need to happen. And I think changes that are occurring will make that difference, and we'll see that in the coming years. So I'm grateful to see that report, how the forces are working, and other things. And so, anyway, thank you. Have a good night. I appreciate the dialogue in the public.
Thank you, Member Taylor. With that, just to echo everybody else's comments, I was elated to see the number of public that showed up on a number of different situations and issues and action items, non-action items. Also, the fact that a whole corner of this room was filled with students, and if we can recall what it was like to be a student and put ourselves in their shoes, I think it helps, but also the courage that it takes to come forth and stand there at that podium and hear your voice echo. But really commend those students and appreciate the public for coming out and the responses that the administration has provided in the presentations, and also would encourage any follow-up questions from the public. Please feel free. We want to hear your comments. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting at 10:05. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to conclude the meeting?
Second.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, we are now concluded.
Alrighty, you guys, thank you all for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it for sticking it out this long. I thought there was going to be a lot more to the reading of the policy, but obviously there wasn't. They don't have nothing prepared, nothing was discussed. They really do got to work on things like that. It's you guys out there, my supporters, the people that follow me, the people that listen to what I have to say. Thank you guys all for being here today. Remember, like, share, go right ahead. And go to our website, politadick.com, click that support button. You guys made today's beautiful sounding broadcast possible. The new microphone system, the new wireless mics that I've been able to hook up, the one that I'm talking to you on right now, made it all possible to be able to hear every person that came up and gave testimony today loud and clear. Greatly appreciate it. You guys all have yourself a great night. I will see you on Saturday unless something else comes up.
Good.